time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. So I had to do some extra errands today that was unplanned. I didn't do the early stream as a result. I know I talked with some of you about doing an early stream today and coming on and chit-chatting with you if you have any questions about the election. So here's what I want to do. During some of the commercial breaks today, I will be taking those questions. So all you got to do is hop on the live stream, though. You can't do it any other way. I don't have any other way set up yet. The text service is still being tested, so I can't really help you with that yet. It'll be completed and finished and ready to go the moment the election is over and you don't need it. So that's how this stuff works. But what I will do is I am going to, in the middle of the commercial breaks, is I will go ahead and just take your questions, okay, on the live stream. So you got to go to rumble.com/Casey the host. Rumble.com/Casey the host. You do that, and we can answer your questions and everything else. During the commercial break, too, Morgan, would you do me a favor and check the audio quality of the live stream? A couple of people are saying there's an issue with the audio. Just during a commercial break. Thank you. She give me a thumbs up. So she looks like she's enjoying food over there, which I'm not enjoying right now. So there's that. All right, let's talk about the jobs report. They pitched you that this is the greatest economy in the history of economies, right? Like that was the pitch. Like that was Joe Biden's pitch. Then Kamala Harris came in and said, "Yeah, the economy's so amazing. Like I wouldn't change a thing." And then even Tim Walz is like, "Yeah, the economy is the greatest it's ever been." I mean, you need to have those tough discussions with people at the produce section in the grocery store. And yeah, naturally, I told you, I said, listen, you can gaslight about a lot of things. You can tell people that the economy is actually better than it really is. If their life is okay, they'll believe it. If the economy is great and an individual is not doing well because of personal circumstances, they won't believe you that the economy is doing great. There's always people who do well in a bad economy, and there's always people who do poorly in a good economy. And it's just how it is. So there's always going to be those individuals who are detractors. So you have to find the things that are relatively universal. So what are some universal things that we all deal with, right? We all deal with the price of goods. Now, if you're a rich person, you generally don't care. And I'm not talking about people who do well for themselves. I'm talking about rich people. Rich people don't notice that. And I can tell you from personal experience where relatives of mine worked for ultra wealthy people, they do not pay attention to any of it. They do not know what a normal cost of something is. They don't even generally know what the proper interest rate for an automobile is. They're really bad with that stuff. Now, sometimes if you have somebody who built their wealth, that's different. But for a lot of folks, particularly generationally wealthy, they just don't notice that stuff. Or if they have been so wealthy for so long and other people manage their money and they have people who do their stuff for them. So, for example, this is where my former relative's experience kind of comes in. They'd wake up in the morning. They would get a list of things that needed to be done. And then they would go do it. Things that needed to be bought, things that needed to be taken care of, that sort of thing. There is an open-ended credit card that is involved. They don't pay attention to any of it. Like none of it. Like literally none of it. They don't care about the cost. They don't care about the cost fluctuation. It's just, hey, I want these 3 really expensive designer purses today. Go get them. Is there a budget? No, just whatever it costs. I don't care. There's nothing like that. Okay. They just spend money. They're not actually out running and doing it. There's somebody who is working for them that handles that, okay? So my goal in life is to have that person. I want somebody who just handles all of the minutia and stuff like that for me every single day. A lot of people out there have that goal. For me, like I don't need to be ultra wealthy, but if I can get to a point where, hey, a couple days a week, I can have somebody just like handle the crap that I don't want to deal with, That'd be awesome for me. There are people who live their lives that way with a team of people who do all of their stuff for them, and all they do is go to work, all they do is go to the gym, all they do is go to therapy, all they do is get a massage, all they do is cheat on their spouse, all they do is this, all they do is that, all they do is that. They don't do any of the day-to-day stuff. So they don't know what things cost. So you'll run into those people frequently in Washington, D.C. Those are the Joe Bidens, okay? The Joe Bidens will go out there, they will tell you, but you're making more money than you were before. So it's like it's a wash. And the problem is that for the rest of you out there, like that's not the case. And when you have a journalist, a wealthy journalist, even looking Joe Biden in his, dead shark-like eyes, hey, people are really concerned about grocery store prices. Like, this is a real problem for people. And Joe Biden be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But we saw how disconnected he was when those questions came up when he was running, right? So then he doesn't run. Kamala Harris takes over. And it's the same reaction. And eventually, after a couple of months, she gets to the point where she's like, okay, I'm going to bring prices down for everybody. Well, what policy would you change from Joe Biden's administration that would help with that? I can't think of a thing that I would change. Like, there isn't anything that was done wrong that could have been altered? No. It's all, it's all good. But it's not good. Well, we're bringing interest rates down. Okay, well, the last interest rate reading before the election, interest rates increased. They didn't go down. The last interest rate reading that we had just a couple weeks ago, last one before the election, interest rates went up. They didn't come down. Morgan, did the news media make a big deal out of that? It's funny how the news media will be like, hey, interest rates are down. And then when they go back up, the news media is like, we're not going to tell you about that anymore. Greg Gutfeld told you about it. I told you about it. Dan Bongino told you about it. CNN didn't tell you about it. MSNBC didn't tell you about it. But interest rates went up. So interest rates are increasing. When the jobs report is really good, what happens? News media, wall-to-wall coverage for 3 days about the jobs report, right? Every Democrat out there is talking about how great the jobs report is. Do they ever tell you when it gets revised downward? No. When does it get revised downward? 98% of the time. We're at a point now where 2 years in a row, folks, the Biden administration lied to you to the tune of hundreds of thousands of jobs. I think 1 year it was like 2 million jobs or something like that. They lied to you about how many jobs were created. And most of those jobs that were created went to non-U.S. citizens. Think about that. Full-time employment is less now than it was in 2019. We're losing full-time employment. Part-time employment is going up. The number of Americans who have to have more than one job to make a full-time income is going up. But we're losing full-time employment. They were touting manufacturing the other day, or the other week. Remember that? Everything was, we're the ones that brought the manufacturing jobs back. Donald Trump didn't. That's not true. Donald Trump brought the manufacturing jobs back. Obama came to Concord, Indiana, in Elkhart County, and said those jobs are gone forever. You are never going to see them again. And Trump can't wave a magic wand and bring them back. Well, he did. Now, what's happened over the past year with manufacturing jobs? We've lost tens of thousands of them. Since the beginning of the year, we are down tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs in the U.S. For 7 of the last 10 months, we have lost manufacturing jobs. We have lost manufacturing jobs up until the jobs report today, and I haven't looked specifically at manufacturing, so I won't include it. We lost manufacturing jobs 3 months in a row. So they were arguing about interest rates are coming down. Well, they went up right before the election. They're talking about the job market being really good. Well, guess what? Job market for October sucked. Absolute total garbage. Frankly, the last couple of jobs reports that they were touting as being good weren't very good for U.S. citizens. They weren't very good for people who wanted a full-time job. That's why we broke it down for everybody. Folks, I don't... Do you realize if they go out there and they tell you that, hey, we added 100,000 jobs in a month, Do you realize that that's a low number and that is generally not seen as great? You realize that? Do you know what they added in October? 12,000. 12. Okay, we're coming into the holiday season and we only added 12,000 jobs. And 100,000 jobs would be a not great jobs report. So interest rates are up. The jobs report is garbage. What do they have to run on here? Honestly, what do they have to run on? At some point, folks, and by the way, if you think the unemployment rate holding steady at 4.1% when you only added 12,000 jobs is a legitimate number, you're crazy. You are absolutely crazy. At some point, even her supporters have to look at this and go, okay, everything they keep telling us about the economy is not true. Everything that they keep telling us they have succeeded at doing, well, it isn't true anymore. Hasn't ever been true. But like now they can't hide from it. This is the last one you get before you go vote if you haven't voted already. The last one. For those of you still holding out, this is the last bit. Interest rates went up. Jobs report is awful. Awful. We'll break it down further in the next segment here. Rumble.com/Casey the host. I'll take any election questions that you have. If you're asking about specific races and things like that, it might be able to help you with that. You can go there, rumble.com/Casey the host. Join the live stream. You have to be signed up and logged in to be able to participate in the chat. We got more coming up on The Burning Truth. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Somebody sent a text message, and they just said that their spouse was fired this week. Company wanted to take them part-time, and they refused, so they fired them. And I'm sorry that happened. That sucks. That's terrible. And yeah, that's not fun. But this has been happening to people, really for the past couple of years. And the news media comes out there and they tell you, hey, the jobs report is this. And when the jobs report is low, what they do is they go, it's slightly lower than expected, but we still created 120,000 jobs. And then you start looking at the jobs report and they go, all right, so they created 120 some odd thousand jobs. Cool. What type of jobs are they? And they're part-time jobs. And then when you look at the full-time employment dropped in most of those. Not all of them, okay? I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that every single one of them did it. Not every single one. But the reality is that we've been talking about that for an extended period of time. And you have to, like I said, at some point, you have to look at it and you have to go, hey, why do they keep telling us that the jobs numbers are good? But then when we actually break down the report, they're not great. The last jobs report, remember that one? That was the one that they finally got. They're like, see, we're right here. We're turning everything around. And I looked at it. Several economists looked at it. And we said, this doesn't pass the smell test at all. Let's dive into the numbers. What did we find out? Manufacturing declined. The private sector was awful. But the public sector, government jobs, grew a lot. So the last jobs report for September, which everybody was touting as being so good, the private sector employment was awful, folks. It was not great. It was only the public sector government jobs that were doing well. Everything else was bad. Everything else. So you tie that in there where even the so-called good jobs report, which they had to change the way that they registered a couple of things, which we covered in detail last month. Go back and listen to that podcast. They changed the way that they reported things to artificially inflate September's jobs report. It was all designed to try and push the election. Well, there has to be a correction on the backside of that. So you take a look at what happened today, which is, and I quote now, it's being called an ugly report. It's bad. Okay, so not only were there only 12,000 jobs created in October, all of them were government jobs. Morgan, you interested at all in what the private sector payroll numbers were? So people who do not work for the government, 28,000 people, those jobs no longer exist. The private sector lost 28,000 jobs in a month. There was 0 jobs created in the private sector. 0. We lost 28,000. The only jobs created, only 12,000, were government jobs. This jobs report is bad. The last jobs report wasn't great. It was being touted as great, but it wasn't great even with the way they manipulated the data. The jobs reports for the 2 months prior to that were bad. And Kamala Harris's answer to what would you do differently is, I can't think of a single thing. Now, here's where the spin comes in. Oh, it's all about the hurricanes. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. You're honestly trying to say, okay, we had 2 hurricanes, and 2 hurricanes nuked the entire country's job market. 2 hurricanes did that, folks. That's what they're telling you. No. Absolutely not. You start looking at the revisions. There's another revision again of the previous jobs report. Oh, son of a gun. It's like it did the thing that I told you it was going to do again, Morgan. It's weird. That good jobs report, that wasn't a very good jobs report. Oh, yeah, there's a revision to that. Oh, yeah, look at that. It's not great. Hurricanes didn't affect the previous jobs report since the hurricanes didn't exist. Am I right? All of this happening right before the election, really bad for Kamala Harris. Could be really good for Donald Trump. Got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Yeah, so some of the questions that are rolling through on the live stream, they're really asking about the ballot question, most of them. Some people are asking about Ted Cruz in Texas and that sort of thing. I think that Texas is collecting the early votes. I don't think they're counting them yet, which Indiana does. So I can't see any results. All I can see is that there's record numbers in Texas like there are in Indiana and other places, but not quite 2020 levels. 2020, again, an anomaly. But beyond that, record numbers. So one of the questions was, hey, what was should we get rid of the superintendent of education in that ballot question? The answer is yes. That position no longer exists. So if you're looking at Indiana ballot question number 1, and this is, I'm going to basically tell you to vote for 2 things guaranteed, okay? And obviously, I think that many of you understand how I'm voting on most of the other stuff, but these ones here are not me endorsing anybody or telling you what to do, per se, although I am technically endorsing the Supreme Court justices. So the ballot question that is on every Indiana ballot, shall the Constitution of the state of Indiana be amended to remove the state superintendent of public instruction from the list of office holders who shall discharge the powers and duties of the governor if the office of the governor and lieutenant governor are both vacant? What this does, this is a line of succession thing. First of all, the superintendent of public instruction was the 6th person in line if everybody else died, okay? We're talking about like a major tragedy or a conflict, something like that. Everybody gets killed. You're now down to the 6th line of succession. That was the superintendent of education, which is superintendent of public instruction. Okay, that's in the Indiana Constitution. That position no longer exists. That is not a job anymore. It is not a government post anymore. Therefore, it should be removed. If you need further detail on that, I want you to go to btmedia.news. Under posts, click on podcast, and I want you to go listen to my interview with J.D. Prescott. Okay, he's an Indiana House representative. And it is, I believe, the top podcast that is up there. Okay, and it explains everything. It's 14 minutes long. He tells you everything you need to know about it. And it's right there at btmedia.news. Underneath posts, click podcast. It's right there for you, okay? And that will explain everything. But there's no sense in having somebody in the line of succession that doesn't exist anymore. And God forbid we get to a point where we're 6 people deep in the line of succession for Indiana. There will be a massive fight over who gets to take that post because superintendent of public instruction doesn't exist. And whoever heads up education in the state, that's not the position. So some people will say, well, this is the equivalent, therefore it counts. And other people will go, no, this specifically said the superintendent of public instruction, but we eliminated that position. This person is no longer in the line of succession, even if it's an equivalent post. So that can get ugly real fast. So you want to get rid of that, okay? So you want to vote. You want to vote to get rid of it. So you do want to amend the Constitution. You want to remove the superintendent of public instruction. The other thing is the 3 Supreme Court justices. You need to retain them, okay? Retain them. They're good justices. They adhere to the Constitution. The Democrats are actively campaigning against them in a very historical, atypical manner. The goal is to get McCormick to win. She becomes the governor. For you to not retain the Supreme Court justices and for her to get 3 new Supreme Court justices that she gets to appoint. She's already told you she doesn't care about their constitutional leanings. She doesn't care about their adherence to the rule of law. She told you in an interview that we put on the air, she will appoint people who are activists for abortion rights, LGBTQ plus rights, etc. Okay, not constitutional justices. If that happens, here's what happens. If you do not retain these 3, let's just say it's the nuclear scenario. McCormick wins, Braun loses. All right? McCormick is now the governor. We don't retain the 3 Supreme Court justices that are on your ballot right now. So they vacate the Supreme Court. McCormick as governor now gets to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. The governor appoints, you vote to retain when their term is up. It's a unique system in Indiana. So she would get to appoint everybody who's not retained. If she does that, the court is completely flipped. The court will now take away the abortion law, it will take away constitutional carry, and it will take away school choice. Like that. She's said it. The Indiana Democratic Party has said it. They already have a legal case ready to go in case this happens. This is the state party's strategy. Get McCormick to win. Do not retain these justices. She gets to appoint those justices. You change the entire state of Indiana forever. That's the goal. So my recommendations are for you to remove the superintendent of public instruction from the line of succession because it doesn't exist anymore, and for you to retain the 3 Supreme Court justices. The rest of it is up to you. If you want my opinion about it, you can hop onto the live stream during the commercial breaks, and you can ask me about that. Okay? Happy to help you. So the jobs report, again, really, really ugly, not very helpful for Kamala Harris. She gave a speech today, and frankly, she looks dejected. She is very tired. She's been tired. She's been taking several days off. Trump has not taken any days off, by the way. She's not doing big interviews as she probably should be doing. I think because she doesn't want to answer very difficult questions. She has trouble answering these questions in a 3-minute sit-down, guys. How is she going to do it in a 3-hour interview? It's not going to happen. The one time she was supposed to do a short interview, she showed up 15 minutes late, and then she left like 5 minutes early. And she got obliterated by a guy who didn't ask her anything complicated or crazy. So she's not going to sit down with Joe Rogan. So now you start to take a look at the excuses. So the excuses are basically, the hurricanes are the reason that the jobs report is so bad. No. We had downward revisions of 112,000, which isn't good. And it can't be hurricane related. How do you have a revision for previous reports? It revised it down 112,000 jobs, guys. There's nothing good about it. Now, if the unemployment rate stayed at 4.1%, it was actually 4.145% versus 4.051%. So it technically is a 0.1% increase, but they're fudging the numbers again. But they don't show those decimals in the unemployment rate. Like I said, you have to dive into the U6 number to actually get your real unemployment rate. Do anybody in the news media do that? No, of course not. The household survey added 150,000 jobs, but the main reason the unemployment rate did not rise to 4.2%, aside from rounding, was that the labor participation rate dropped 0.1% to 62.6%. Do you know what that means, Morgan? And I'm only asking you, and I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot. I'm only asking you because you're relatively new to politics. I'm assuming that you're not an economics major?
No, I'm not an economics major.
I don't say that as a slight. I say that because I know her background and what she does.
I got a B in economics in college, though. So
okay. So the labor force participation rate is 62.6%.
Okay.
Okay. It just dropped down to 62.6%. Do you have any idea what that means?
No.
Okay. That means that of all of the able-bodied people who are legally allowed to work in the United States of America, 62.6% of them work.
Does that include like people who are like stay-at-home moms? Like what are the...
It does.
Okay.
Yes. So now, do you think that we're anywhere near 37.4% stay-at-home moms?
No.
Not close, right?
No.
So yes, it does include that. It includes people who don't need to work. They got money. Maybe they got a trust fund, whatever. Maybe they got in a car crash. They got some dough now,
That's
right?
what I was going to say. People who are...
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
The labor force participation rate right now is less than pre-COVID. That means as a percentage of our population, less able-bodied adults are working now than before COVID, guys. And it has been that way through Biden's entire administration. Now, you're not going to get a bobblehead on your nightly news to tell you that because they don't know. Their job is to read what the AP wire service sends to their producer it's plugged into the teleprompter. They're not going to dive into this. Your economics experts that could actually explain this stuff to you on the cable news networks are sharing space with three other idiots who are not economics majors, and they have maybe 45 seconds to kind of convey this thought to you. And they're not going to be able to explain that in a way that the average person is going to understand. So, yes, this does include people who don't want to work. It does include people who are, able to stay home, maybe don't need to work, that sort of thing. But that rate is about 20 or so % below what it usually is. That's awful. The Fed is now going to have to think about all of this, and you're going to have to take a look at interest rates again. Remember, they just raised interest rates. Well, I mean, the Fed didn't raise interest rates. Interest rates went up, naturally, the economic interest rate. This is ugly. I really don't know how else to say this. It's ugly. Shock report. October payroll, huge miss as private jobs go negative for the first time since 2020. Did you hear that? Payroll, huge miss as private jobs go negative for the first time since 2020. What happened in 2020? Oh, that's right. China sent a virus everywhere. Yes. You lost 28,000 private sector jobs. No private sector jobs are created at all. Only 12,000 government jobs were created. If the 28,000 jobs were created and not lost, and the 12,000 jobs were created, that would still be a really bad jobs report. If it's under 100,000, folks, it's generally seen as not great.
I can't believe that, especially with the holidays coming up. People start hiring.
We are
way before,
literally right in the
Black
middle.
Friday, Christmas,
yes.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of a part-time hiring season. Right in the middle of it. You know what else we're in the middle of? People trying to get their finances in order. before they pay their taxes. Talking about businesses and stuff like that. There's a lot of people trying to cut weight, trying to make their business look better, trying to help with all of that. Folks, this is awful. So now, as a result of this, we are now waiting for the bond sell-off. So the bond sell-off is going to be happening. That's not good. The U.S. manufacturing survey, you ready for this? Because, again, it was, I think, 4 weeks ago, maybe? Kamala Harris is running around talking about manufacturing jobs, and I had to fact check her on the show and on social media and everything else. Probably could have gone viral on TikTok if I would have put in the time and the effort. Didn't do it, sorry. Manufacturing has been terrible this year. Yet she's, basically putting it out there as a campaign issue that she's winning on that. The manufacturing survey hit a 16-month low. Let's say that again. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the biggest drop in manufacturing jobs since the COVID lockdowns. And we have been losing manufacturing jobs now 8 out of the last 11 months. 4 in a row, I believe. I don't care what your liberal relatives say. I don't care what the weirdo with the sign saying nobody knows how you're going to vote, so just vote for Kamala Harris, as if somehow, some way, if you vote for Kamala Harris, you're in danger or something. I don't care what any of those people say. You can't run and hide from this. There are industries that are struggling. If you go to the grocery store, it isn't because Kroger price gouged, because they didn't. And no, a CEO from Kroger or an executive from Kroger did not admit to price gouging in that court case. That's a lie. Covered that extensively earlier. The jobs report is bad. They have been hiding that from you. If Donald Trump were president of the United States, do you think every single time a jobs report came out that they would tell you that we're losing full-time employment? Oh, yeah, we're creating jobs, but they're only part-time. Because we've been through that, right? We went through that with George W. Bush. Well, we created all these jobs. Oh, yeah, but they're only part-time jobs. Remember that? Why is the news media not telling you that with this economy right now? Because they want Kamala to win. That's the truth. Plain and simple. And your average news reader on your nightly news, local, network, cable, they don't know any of this. They don't put the time into it. Most of them just show up, put makeup on, hop onto camera, read whatever somebody else wrote for them. They don't know the details of it. And honestly, I've been doing this for 51 minutes? Too long, frankly. It doesn't take that much to sit here and actually explain this to people in a way that everybody can understand. The worst part is this data is all publicly available for you at bls.gov. And it's one of the only government entities that actually publishes all their data in a very easy to digest, easy to read manner. We're talking like kids can easily read this. It's inexcusable for anyone in the news media to lie to you about the jobs reports over the past several years. Inexcusable, which means it must be laziness and or intentional. More coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. All right, we got a quick turnaround again. I'm just going to hop in here a little bit earlier than I usually do. The jobs report, like I said, it's bad. But then you look at the fact that we have revised August and September downward to remove 112,000 jobs they told you were created. And August and September numbers weren't frankly great anyway. You start looking at this stuff. You have now, you have 7 of the last 9 months have been revised lower. 7 of the last 9 months. Everything they've told you about jobs this year for the election has been fluff, spin, dishonest lies. The economy is not great. The economy is not good. The things that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were campaigning on were not true. And they can't hide it anymore. They just couldn't get away with it for 1 more month. Got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.